I had social anxiety so bad that I would break down into panic attacks. I had fear and anxiety so bad that I couldn't look you in the eye for more than 3 seconds without wanting to break down and cry, literally. These 4 tools that I'm going to share with you right now changed my whole life. And this isn't coming from a dude who spent his whole life feeling confident on social media, right? And is now giving you tips on how to be confident. This is coming from somebody who's been in the trenches. Since then, I've created my Conquering Any Fear seminars, workshops, online courses, and now I'm going to give you the very best 4 tools that will help give you the freedom in your life that you don't currently have because of your fear. Let's get started. Lesson number 1, your fear is your compass. There's this book by Steven Pressfield. He's an author. He wrote this book called The War of Art, and he describes fear as resistance. And he says, like a magnetized needle floating on a surface of oil, resistance will unfailingly point to true north, meaning that calling or action it most wants to stop us from doing. In other words, your fear is pointing you in the direction exactly where you need to go, exactly where your ultimate destiny is. So if you have fear, so this is a guy who has fear, he's really sad, let's give him some tears. Where your fear is pointing you is like a compass, and it's pointing you in the direction of your greatest destiny. For me, my ultimate destiny lied in speaking. Like when I overcame my lifetime of fear, I wanted to help other people overcome their fear. It's kind of like that saying, hurt people hurt people. Well, healed people heal people. So I wanted to speak on stage. I wanted to have seminars and workshops, but here's the biggest problem. My biggest fear was speaking. My biggest fear was speaking on stage. I couldn't even speak to one person, let alone an audience full of people. And so what I did is I went to a speaking class because I didn't know how to speak. And my first day in the class, I'm looking around and I'm seeing everybody and they're speaking so confidently. And I'm thinking, man, this is legit. And then they called upon me to speak at this place. And I said, are you kidding? I said, I didn't sign up for this. But I didn't say that. I said, okay, sure. So I stood up and I'm looking around and everybody's smiling. And pretty soon my heart starts to race. My hands start to shake. And then I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and I'm so embarrassed. And it was one of those moments, you ever seen that where the speaker's on stage and they're so embarrassed that you feel embarrassed for them? And then they know that you know that they know and it gets super awkward. And there was this guy in front of me that was so embarrassed for me that he covered his face. And I didn't know what to say. I was like, and I sat down. I was mortified. I was humiliated. And I kept thinking to myself, God, why? Why did you put my biggest fear in front of my biggest dream? And that's when I remembered this quote, is that your fear is your compass, is that it's literally pointing you in the direction that you need to go to fulfill your ultimate destiny. There is this thing called the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell, he is an author and he's a study of mythology. And so he created this thing, this framework called the hero's journey that basically says you have a calling as the hero. You do. And your calling is pointing you in the direction of your journey. But there's going to be a part of that journey where everybody's inspired. This is the point of the journey where you feel really inspired. You're like, man, I want to go speak on stage. Man, I want to create that business. Man, I want to do that something, right? This is where you feel the most alive. You're really excited. But then you get to this part where you experience fear. And in the hero's journey, they call this place the threshold. It's called the threshold because people stop here. And this starts lesson number 2. Lesson number 2 is pass the fear test. This is where you'll be tested with your fear. For me, I knew that if I went back and I spoke in front of all those people, I knew that I would experience fear. I knew in my heart that I would experience the most amount of fear that I've ever experienced standing on stage. That was like my biggest fear. So I had to agree that I would do that. I had to agree that I would be willing to experience this massive amount of fear pain during the process. And I said, okay. So what I did is I went back to that class and I signed up and I had my first speech. And I went in front of the podium, the lectern, and I looked around at everybody and my heart was racing and my hands were shaking, but I had to pass the fear test. And I told myself, I said, I am not going to run. This is the first time in my life where I'm going to sit here, I'm going to experience this pain, and nobody's going to move me from this place. And so I started speaking. The first minute went by. The second minute went by. The third, the fourth, and then pretty soon, I got to minute 6. And I was done. And I was so happy. I was so elated. I was so confident. I didn't die. If you don't die, then that means that you are a success. And if you do die, that's fine. Just don't leave. Stay there. I passed the fear test. There's this quote that I love by Pema Chodron. She's a monk and she says it like this: only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. And when I was up there and I was experiencing this fear, this pain, the fear started to melt away. So whatever your thing is, if it's posting online, if it's going to talk to somebody that you're afraid of, if it's speaking up at a meeting, whatever that fear is for you that's preventing you from going to the next level, you have to be willing to sit there with your fear pain in order to pass the test. And so when I passed my test, I felt so good, but somebody told me, they said, Peter, if you want true mastery, if you really want to conquer this fear, which I did, they said you need more stage time. So lesson number 3, get more stage time. Here's what I mean. I knew that if I wanted to conquer my fear, I needed to extinguish this fear in some way. I knew that I had to speak more. I needed to get more stage time. So what did I do? I joined a second class, a second speaking class, so I could be in those fearful situations even more. What did I do? I started speaking in cafes with friends. I started speaking in living rooms. I started speaking at retirement homes. I called up and I said, do you mind if I speak in front of your elderly, group? And they said, sure. So I'd be sitting there in their lunchroom speaking. I was just getting stage time. I was extinguishing this fear. And then pretty soon, something magical started to happen. My shaky hands disappeared. My shaky voice disappeared. My fast beating heart rate started to slow down a little bit. I started to feel like more of myself because I had done it so many times. There's this thing in psychology called the confidence-competence loop. It says the more that you know something, the more competency that you have in that area. And the more competency that you have in that area, the more confidence that you have with that thing. Pretty soon, I was competent with my fear because I had been with it so many times. And since I had been with my fear so many times, I felt competent with it, which gave me confidence. I knew how I would feel in front of a group of people. I knew what the anxiety felt like. I knew what the adrenaline felt like at that point. Does that make sense? It wasn't something that was foreign to me. The reason why people freak out when it comes to speaking on stage or posting or saying something to somebody is because they haven't done it enough. In the beginning, posting online, posting things on social media freaked me out. But I knew that I had to get stage time with posting. So I would post every single day to make sure that I was using the confidence competency loop. The more that I was with that fear of posting, the more that I started to experience confidence with it. Does that make sense? So pretty soon, I was confident. And then I had my very first seminar. This is where everything was going to be put to the test. I was following my fear like a compass. I was getting more stage time. And now it was time to really put everything on the line. At the seminar, I was looking around the corner. I had 35 people, which seemed like a lot. And I was about to go on stage, and then my heart starts racing. Then my hands start shaking again. I said, "Are you kidding?" I thought I was over all of this. So I got on stage, I looked out over the audience, and then pretty soon, boom, my speaking training took over. And for an hour and a half, I was more confident and more alive than I ever thought I could be. And then at the end, people were clapping, they were applauding. And I noticed there was this line of people who were coming to talk to me. And at the end of the line, I saw this woman. She was really meek. She was really fragile. She had her hair pulled back. She had these glasses. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, what is she gonna say to me? And she comes up, she looks around and she says, "Peter, I haven't left my house for almost a year. And your seminar, it changed my life, Peter. Thank you so much. Thank you." Lesson number 4, tie your fear to service. As soon as I saw her, as soon as she shared with me her story, it gave me juice, it gave me fire, it gave me more power to overcome my fear. Somebody's life out there is depending on you getting over your fear so you can be the leader that you were created to be. No matter what your fear is, no matter what your anxiety is, somebody's life out there needs for you to step into your role so you can be that creator, that writer. Nobody can write it like you. Nobody can create it like you. Nobody can do it like you. Whatever your fear is, just remember these. Your fear is your compass. Pass the fear test. Get more stage time and tie your fear to a service to other people. Conquer any fear, my friend, and live your dream. I'll see you next time.